Good evening. It's Robyn here with Empowering Businesses. I'm here with Taz. Taz, can you please introduce yourself?
You bet. Thanks for having me, Robyn. So Taz Rajan, I'm the community engagement partner at Bromwich and Smith.
Wonderful. And what do you do exactly?
Oh, interesting. So as the community engagement partner, I kind of have these two roles. One of them is really to, help educate the general public, Canadians in general, on what exactly does a licensed insolvency trustee do? What makes it different from, some of the other things that are out there? How do you, how do you deal with any issues you have with a licensed insolvency trustee? And really a lot of education around debt and our rights as Canadians with debt, because it's not a topic we really talk about, and it's not something that's taught in school, and the bank really doesn't want you to know about it. So that's one side of what I do. And so whether that's these kinds of things, lots of media, doing presentations, lunch and learns, that sort of thing. And then the other side of it is really working with reputable businesses, whether they're car dealerships, accountants, bookkeepers, divorce professionals, right? And helping them understand how we can help their clients and being able to have them refer their clients to us and have us refer our clients to them. So it's kind of that twofold.
That's really amazing. So exactly what do you mean when you're talking about this debt?
Yeah. So, we are a credit-based society. That's just how North Americans are. And credit's not going away anytime soon. So just like, in Canada, there's an exit strategy for a marriage that breaks down for whatever reason there may be. We have legal divorce processes, right? And we're it used to be very taboo, but I think we're accustomed to talking about divorce now. Well, same thing in Canada. We're very fortunate. Not all countries have this. There is a legal debt exit program, and that's offered through a licensed insolvency trustee. There's lots of them across Canada. It's governed by the Office of Superintendent of Bankruptcy. Trustees go through a great deal of education. There's a lot of rigor around the role. There's legislation, there's regulations, there's ethical practices, there's a complaint process and all of that. And it's the legal exit for Canadians who become overwhelmed by debt. Lots of different things that can get us there. Nobody in well, not nobody, I suppose like 99% of Canadians don't intend to go, oh, let's rack up all this debt and then not pay it back, right? I mean, obviously with anything, there's, the few, right? But there are, extenuating circumstances, external triggers that make it impossible for some people to really pay off that debt and to be able to live their lives. And so we have debt exit here in Canada through a licensed insolvency trustee, and there's two programs officially that fall under that.
What are those two programs?
I knew you'd ask me that. So the two debt exit programs in Canada are consumer proposal and bankruptcy. Again, both can only be offered through a licensed insolvency trustee.
So how do you know if somebody is licensed?
Oh, that's a really good question. So you can look it up under the Office of Superintendent of Bankruptcy. You can look up their company name, but a lot of times, they'll talk about consumer proposals or they'll talk about debt options. They won't necessarily say whether they are a licensed insolvency trustee firm or not. Whereas if you go to like a Bromwich and Smith or some of our competitors, even like immediately you're going to see licensed insolvency trustee. And so that means they're licensed, federally regulated, and there is like a process and there's protection there for a Canadian when you're working with something that's regulated, right?
Because there are so many people out there that say, I can do this, but can they really help you with that debt and give you that peace of mind to move forward?
Yeah, there are lots of different options, and it's definitely not a one size fits all. What you really want to be careful about is the companies that charge a fee. Like I've been through it. I know what it's like when you literally are in this position where you can't pay your bills, and then somebody says to you, I'm going to help you with that, but first you got to pay me. Okay, I can't pay my existing debt. And
No,
now
you're
you
going to
want to
ask for
pay,
more.
yeah, you want me to pay you to represent me. So, you really want to be careful about that. If somebody is asking to be paid or saying that they're going to represent you or saying that, oh, a trustee works for the creditor. Trustee is an officer of the court and they need to balance the creditor and technically it's called the debtor, but the client or the Canadian, right? So the citizen who has the debt and the creditor who gave the debt The trustee is an officer of the court that's got to balance both. So they don't work for your creditors. They also technically don't work for you, but they aren't going to charge you a big fee to work with them. So that's really important.
Mm-hmm. I've actually never heard that side of it. But backing up, you had mentioned proposal versus bankruptcy.
Right.
What does that actually mean in everyday terms, and how is that going to apply to some business owners that during COVID did unfortunately become quite heavily in debt?
Yeah, absolutely. And we are seeing more and more of that for sure. So consumer proposal is like the biggest, best kept secret, and it is the most powerful alternative to bankruptcy. So I'm going to talk about that one first. So in a consumer proposal, basically, we had talked about this earlier. It's like if I'd made a lunch date with you, and then as I'm heading out, my kid, whatever, falls, splits open their head, they're bleeding out. I mean, I'm taking my kid to emergency. I'm not coming to lunch, right? I would probably at some point have the courtesy to let you know I'm not going to make it for lunch, but I'm not the scum of the earth for doing that. There, we had an agreement based on one situation. My situation changed. I can't make this lunch anymore. It's the same thing. You made a contract with a creditor under one situation, and then something has changed, like a business owner who maybe was just barely hanging on during COVID, took SEBA, and now, SEBA repayment, the business hasn't like gone back up to the level that it was supposed to go up to, and they're struggling. So a consumer proposal allows that individual or that business to negotiate a settlement with their creditor. So just like in the lunch analogy, I would be like, I can't make it today. We're going to have to reschedule. And maybe it's not lunch, maybe it's coffee. Same kind of thing. I can't pay off this $100,000 worth of debt anymore. My situation has changed. So, the licensed insolvency trustee will look at, well, what would happen if you declared bankruptcy? Okay, well, this is what the bankruptcy would look like. So in a consumer proposal, we want to offer the creditors better than a bankruptcy, but not necessarily the full amount. And it could be 10 cents on the dollar, it could be 99 cents on the dollar. It really depends on the individual and their whole situation. So you want to have that consultation, but it's a negotiated settlement that basically, you're agreeing to pay back a portion of the debt over a maximum of 5 years, zero interest, none at all.
Wow.
There's no upfront fee with Bromwich and Smith. It's included in your payment. So again, federally legislated, 20% of your payment goes to the trustee, 80% goes to your creditors, right across the board. All the trustees do it the same. So you don't have to worry about, is someone going to dupe me? And if, let's say, your situation changes and all of a sudden you come into money or your business starts to pick up and you're like, I want to pay this off early, you can pay it off early with no penalties. I mean, it's so great. And the impact on your credit is less than what it would be with a bankruptcy. You can start to rebuild credit while you're in a consumer proposal. Of course, we want to make sure that you're getting your counseling sessions in, you're learning to, deal with your credit maybe differently than you did the first time around. But it's such a powerful alternative to bankruptcy that we just don't talk about.
Absolutely. And that's 5 years, because I've always heard 7 years. So that's really interesting.
Okay, so now what you're talking about with the 7 years is really bankruptcy and also how long things remain on your credit report. So if you've got a late payment, a collections, a judgment, or you've gone for credit counseling, done a debt management program, or a consumer proposal, all of those are going to impact your credit for roughly 7 years. So any of the programs that you do, it'll be the time of the program. So ours would be, let's say, 5 years if you took the full time, and then it's going to stay on for 3 years after that. So that's maximum 7, but that's like 8, right? Credit counseling, it's 4 years, and then it's going to stay on for 2 years after. So 4 plus 2 is 6. So that's where that like 7 years comes in.
Okay.
And then also with the bankruptcy, on a first-time bankruptcy, an individual who does not have something we call surplus income, and we're not going to get into that in a lot of detail today. First-time bankruptcy would be 9 months, but then it's going to remain on their credit report for 6 years after that 9 months is discharged. So that's where you get that 7 years. And that's where like a lot of those myths come in, like, oh, don't talk to a trustee. You'll never get credit for 7 years, or it'll mess up your credit for 7 years. Listen, if you've had late payments or collections,
you've already messed it up.
Right? And it's already messed up for 7 years. Why not do something to get it cleaned up and get it in your past so that you can get rebuilding?
Mhm. That is really interesting. And unfortunately, I see such a shame on business owners or any individual
Yes,
after being in this position because they never wanted to be.
of
So I was,
course.
and I think we've all been there. I don't think there's one person that hasn't struggled at some point. So I'm assuming confidentiality is a huge part of your business and
Yes, absolutely. That consultation is completely confidential. Nothing gets like advertised in the newspaper or, it's you. And in our case, you're talking to a debt relief specialist. So it's completely confidential. It's completely free. And there's no obligation. And that should be a warning sign. If you're talking to someone and they're like, we better sign today. You got to sign it right now. Let's get this signed right now. Or, let's at least get your deposit in, like, whoa, just hold your horses there, because this is big. These are big things. I think it takes quite a bit of time to even admit that we need help and then to reach out for help. And then that's like, when you've been divorced or widowed and you haven't dated in like, 10 years and you go on that first date and someone's like, let's get married right now and have babies. Whoa, slow it down, right? Let's have our first date and then let me think things through and we decide whether we want to see each other again or not. So yeah, it is an absolutely confidential conversation, and you're really going to get a really good understanding of like what your situation is, what your options are, what is the recommendation, what's going to be the impact of any of the choices you make, and then you can really think it through and make a really informed decision. For me, it's so empowering. Like, before people call us, they're just weighed down, stressed out, feeling sad, feeling depressed, feeling hopeless, feeling all the shame and stigma. And then you have that conversation, and literally, like, we can hear it on the phone when we're speaking to them. We can hear them breathe differently. It's this sigh of relief. You feel a weight lifted off your shoulders, and you've just got like a better picture of what's your situation and what are your options.
mhm. And nowhere in business school do they ever talk about any of this. They just say, don't get there. Well, circumstances change. It happens. And it's not something to be ashameful. It's not.
Absolutely. It's so much more common than we think. Like, I know when I went through my personal journey, I don't know how this makes any logical sense. It doesn't, but you're emotional in that state, right? So I literally was like, I'm the only one. How could this happen to me? I've been in finance all my life. Like, bankruptcy is the end of the world. I'm a fool. I'm stupid. Like, all of these things. Well, if I were the only person, we wouldn't have a Canada-wide body that strictly deals with debt forgiveness. So obviously, logically speaking, that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
But in the moment, you do feel like you're the only one, and you feel like you can't talk to your friends or family or other business owners about it because they all look so successful. But we don't know what's happening behind closed doors, right?
That's exactly it. You have no idea who has the fancy cars, could be the one that's having the issues, or the guy
Or
that's
they've
wearing
already
secondhand
gone through
clothes.
it, right? Like me, I have the fancy car and the nice home and the credit cards, and been through it though, been through my, bankruptcy, and I've come out the other end. So maybe I'd be intimidating to somebody, but man, if someone ever opened up to me and said, I'm struggling with debt, I would love to have that conversation. And I would be the first to say, I did too. And here's what I did.
Yes. Now, going again back, you mentioned credit counseling.
Right.
So what is that like? You have to come into your office, or is that something you do over Zoom? Like, how does that actually work?
Yeah. So part of, again, federally legislated, whether you do a consumer proposal or a bankruptcy, there are 2 counseling sessions. And they're mandatory. They're part of, in order to be discharged or to get that certificate of completion, you need to have those 2 counseling sessions. Now, Bromwich and Smith is, we serve digitally comfortable Canadians. So everything we do is by phone, video, live chat, or text messaging. So our 2 counseling sessions are done over a video. We can accommodate somebody if they do want to meet in person, but generally it's over video. So it's in the comfort of your own home. You can be in your pajamas, there could be chaos going on at home. But really it's part of, one of the pillars of the act is rehabilitation of that Canadian, right? So that's the whole it's not assuming, hey, you were stupid and you made some stupid decisions. It's like, hey, everyone has an opportunity to maybe learn a new skill, or maybe look at these things, and maybe there's some tips and tricks we can give you. So we'll talk about consumerism, and needs versus wants, and credit, and savings and investments and insurance to a certain degree. But it's really about helping you have the tools in your tool belt, so that we're a credit-based society, are going to have credit again. How do we avoid, this is one business where we don't want repeat clients. So really equipping you so that you don't need to come back and see us in a few years.
That's really interesting, because it's learning, and banks and creditors they're willing to hand it to you even when you're not really able to repay it, which
Right.
makes it unfair, because normally when you're asking, it's because you're having a hard time.
Right.
So now they're like, here, we'll give you more, and we know you're really not going to pay it, and we're going to get a little bit higher interest. And yeah.
Yeah, and that's where, it's kind of easy to be like, that's not fair, but also like the onus is on us, right? This is an information era. There is so much information out there. I mean, if you look at our website, you should see the number. We do 3 blogs a week. We've got a newsletter. We've got a debt calculator. I mean, there are so many resources, right? So the onus is on us. Just like, again, I'm going to go back to like the marriage and divorce thing, right? You can just get married, and everybody says to get married and live happily ever after. No, there's work required to make a marriage work. And you need to take it upon yourself to work on communication, to work on like fidelity, or, all of those things, right? Same thing. Like, I remember going to university, first day, all of these credit card companies were there, and they were giving me like a free t-shirt and a free mug and all of this to apply for credit. Yeah, there was a time where I was like, it's not fair. Like, nobody taught me. But also, the onus is on us. The information is out there, and like, let's get educated. Let's start talking about money and credit and debt and all of those things, and go to the right sources. Don't just learn from, sort of anybody, but the resources are there. And so, the banks have their job, and one of their jobs is to lend money. And then our job is to go, okay, how does this contract work? What is that interest rate? How do I pay this off? What happens if I get into trouble? And where are these resources for me to learn?
That's true. And understanding your cash flow would be a big part of that, and making sure
Which
you're
you help people
educated.
do, right?
I
You
do.
help businesses figure out, and cash flow is cash flow is very different from some of the other things that I think business owners think about and talk about. Like, I think we're always kind of like talking about supply and supply chain and taxes, but man, if you don't have your cash flow figured out, you're going to come to a screeching halt very, very quickly, or get yourself on that slippery slope that leads you to come see us, right?
Yeah, it doesn't take long. And just because your bottom line is doing good does not mean that cash is coming in at the right times.
Right. Yeah. I love that you help business owners with that. And hopefully, most of the people that seek your advice won't need to come see us. But I also know that if they're talking to you and they're dealing with you, and you see those signs, you're one of those people that's going to be like, listen, here are the debt experts in Canada. Let's have a conversation with them and help normalize that, right? Because you're a trusted advisor. And, I hope that if you do tell someone, to come talk to us, they're going to feel like, yeah, this is the right thing to do, and not have that shame and stigma around it.
Right. And knowing the difference between proposal and bankruptcy, and that you can start rebuilding. So just because you are doing it does not mean the world is coming to an end. You can still keep on going.
Absolutely. And that's a nice thing. A consumer proposal, unlike a bankruptcy, your assets don't vest with the trustee. So a lot of times when we're in that slippery slope, people will go and cash in their RSPs, or cash in their, savings part of their insurance, or kind of like steal from their business reserve or something like that, right? To help themselves out. Well, or think that they're going to lose their home or their car. And in a consumer proposal, your assets do not vest with the trustee. Now, it could impact your payments. That's okay. You still get to keep your home. You get to keep your RSPs. Like, that's really amazing, right? The bankruptcy is the one where some of those things, the assets do come into play, and it doesn't necessarily mean it has to all be liquidated. It will impact your payments. So being aware of that, those are some big myths out there. If you talk to a trustee, you're going to lose your house and your car and your investments. And it's not true.
And there is no harm in reaching out to you, right? And
Absolutely.
finding out your options.
Exactly. Exactly.
Taz, I would love to have a longer conversation another day because I don't even think we touched on half of it. But we are out of time for today. How would people get in contact with you?
Absolutely. So the best way is to visit our website, www.bromwichandsmith.com. We serve all of Canada. We're a Calgary-based company, but we're right across Canada. Or, our number, 1-800-516-7417, and then press 1. And then email would be referrals@bromwichandsmith.com. Hopefully you can have that all typed up at the end of this and
It
share
absolutely
it.
will be, and it will be in the bio down below.
Lovely. Well, thank you so much, Robyn.
Thank you for taking time out of your day to come and help educate everybody. I think we're going to have you back because we haven't even touched on all the types of things that you guys do.
Wonderful. I look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you.